Andrew, so great to have the opportunity to meet you. How are things going with you?
Yeah, great. The pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure as well. So there you go. So we're both happy. So it's all good. Congratulations on the film. For you, this must feel like forever because it debuted 2 years ago, and clearly made it before that. So this is a long time coming. And I wanted to ask you firstly, how familiar were you with Eugene's work? I remember growing up, and there was a photo in my aunt and uncle's home, and I was always like went to that photo. And my uncle was telling me, "Oh yeah, that's a Eugene Smith. It's an original." And it was the one of the little boy and the girl walking through the woods. And he
Sure,
had
yeah.
one of, yeah. And I will never for so when I saw that even pop up in the movie, I was like, I know that picture so well. So where I'm getting at is there clearly anybody in our generation, even before they all know who he was or it, when his amazing work. How about you? How familiar were you?
Yeah, so I had come across actually the image of Tomoko in the bath when I was, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old. And it was something that really stuck with me, primarily because I didn't have a real grasp on what it meant and why I didn't feel completely destroyed in seeing that image, right? Just
Mhm.
it just stayed with me. There was something more complex there. I felt the love, I felt the compassion, I felt the hope. And I guess as a child, that's what you relate to. You see your mother or you see that love, and that's the thing you're
Right.
yearning for. And it stayed with me. And then, many years later, when I learned more about Gene and his work, and also I took a deeper dive into his subjects, right? I mean, I
Right.
was more interested, frankly, in the subjects, not in the photographer. And I think that alone is a testament to the artist. He drove me to those places, and that I think was or is the goal of any great artist, right? To drive you not to the work, but through the work, beyond the work.
Right.
Um, and so my interest became in, he had a great ability to identify what the real story was, where the hope was, where the love was,
Mhm.
what's the real subject matter. And that's, that sort of artist who was embedding himself with various communities to find that truth, that essential truth, that something more. I found, really interesting. And so I ended up going down the rabbit hole, I don't know, maybe in college, and really investigating those spaces. And then, it took quite a long time to get to a place where we were going to make this film. But
Right.
the Minamata story in particular stayed with me, um, because of where he was in his life, but also because it just first of all, it's still present. These people are still fighting.
That's right.
It's relevant both in Japan and in Minamata, but also around the world. There are these issues that are growing, not disappearing. Um, but also that there was just this heroicism and this ability to break through cultural norms and stand up and be heard.
Yeah.
And it just was so heroic. And the fact that you could tell a story like that, but have this amazing way in where you could be interpretive and poetic and paint with light in the way that someone like Smith would have.
Right.
Um, it just felt very, very unique. Some of the images of some of Smith's images in Minamata in particular are so difficult to look at, or they
100%.
should be if a different photographer took them. But
Right.
instead of turning away, you lean forward. You want to see more. You want to know more, and that's amazing. That's something to aspire to for all of us.
Yeah, his brilliance as a photographer is like the eye is just amazing. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you because once you started to go down that rabbit hole and investigated more and more and found out more and more about this situation, did it scare you to start putting this film together and said like I'm getting this story out there? It's good on you, but it had to have been a little scary.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was an enormous responsibility um, to to do it, but I think we all have inside of us, I hope somewhere, um, this hope that we can be some force for change or
Mhm.
add some positivity to people's lives or just be good. Just
Right.
do something good. Um, and as artists, we certainly hope that that could be in the work. And I was unsure. I mean, once Johnny was on board, I knew I had somebody that could play the role and be brilliant. And But before I really agreed or decided to officially make the film, I traveled to Minamata. I spent hours talking to Eugene Smith and the family and learning as much as I could about him.
Yeah.
But then I needed the blessing of the current Minamata patients, families of, was that, did my sound just go away?
No, no, you're all good.
Uh,
I can hear you all good.
All right, good. The Minamata patients, family members of victims who passed away over the years. Um, and, I just needed to know what they wanted and if this made sense, because of course it was going to bring up quite a lot for them.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're still fighting to be heard. There's a difference in having a film that goes out around the world. And so I went and spent some time with them, and I was just so inspired and blown away that almost to the individual, whether they'd lost a child or, were victims themselves.
Mhm.
The sort of mandate was, Andrew, go make this film, but not for us, but make it so that there aren't any more Minamatas. Make it so that
Right.
other people can benefit from what we
Yeah.
suffered through, and continue to suffer through. And it was just so inspiring to hear them say it in those terms, that honestly there was no turning back. I mean, it was scary because of the responsibility.
Yes.
But once you're on that path and it feels like a righteous one, people come and go,
Yeah.
partners and different things come and go, and not everyone has the same moral compass that you do, or constitution, and there are all sorts of roadblocks to put up. But when you have that sort of mandate from those sorts of people, you just don't look back. I mean, they're inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Johnny Depp, hello, one of the best actors of our generation. I mean, come on, the guy loses himself into every single role that he takes on. And once he decided to do this one, just tell me a little bit about his commitment. And, like I said, I've interviewed him many, many times. And wow, I'm always so blown away by his performances. You must have been sometimes standing behind that camera going, yikes, this guy really just loses himself.
We built a world for, because of the seriousness of our commitment to the story, and to the human beings we were portraying. I felt that the most important thing here was, that real essential truth, and making sure that essential truth in the characters, in the environments, in the situations, was there and looked after, right? And sure, like everything from details like a very unique dialect that they use in Minamata, and making sure that the actors were exactly right on it, to the sound of the birds that were there in Minamata, and the water, and all the recordings we did to make sure that those things were exactly right,
Right.
and the light and all of it, and every piece of costume, and it had a lot of, there was so much specificity in it, but all of that, as much as it was for a final product, it also was in service to the actors, because I wanted them to be able to walk in and step foot on our set or our stage or our
Yeah,
location,
yeah.
and live and be those people. And so, with Johnny, it was a long road, and he worked incredibly hard to understand Smith, to get who he was really truly, not an accent, not a finger gesture, not some
Mm.
kind of external prop, but something really inside, who he was and where he would be and what he'd be thinking, and how he'd be reacting in these moments. And so by the time we got to set, to shooting, he was able to step onto our set as Eugene Smith. And God bless those other actors. They also, for their roles, were able to do the same. I mean, people were really educated on what was going on, what was happening.
Mhm.
And so the result is, when you shot certain scenes, they felt real. I mean, we felt like we were experiencing these moments. And if anything was difficult, it wasn't the creation, it was moving on to the next moment or the next scene, because it was so emotional for all of us watching what felt like real events take place. And Johnny had this way of saying it. He felt like he had stepped into a documentary film.
Wow.
And that was a great compliment to our whole team.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, for sure. It's incredible to me how big an impact Life magazine had on the world. You know, for this to for Smith to have pushed so hard to go down there and cover this, and then like didn't the pictures knock off like Raquel Welch off the cover or
Yeah,
something? Is that
Raquel
the
Welch was
story?
still on the cover. But what's interesting about what you're getting at is, and part of why I spent the time, I was eager as a filmmaker to just get to the Minamata part of the story, but a big part of the story too, and something that's very important and troubling to me. This was a moment in time that really started or was the beginning of where we are today.
Hmm.
Um, with the need to pull eyeballs because there are suddenly a lot of places for them to go. It's obviously much more extreme today, but at that time, you know, uh, the editor of Life magazine had to put Raquel Welch in roller skates on the cover of a magazine in order to get enough eyeballs to sell
Right.
liquor and cigarette ads on the
Yeah.
inside, just to eventually 25 pages in show you something that actually was a service to mankind, to society, to show you
Right.
these images. He needed to do all those things, and still Life magazine went under, not shortly thereafter. And that's why those scenes in the office were so important to me, was for Gene to express that other side, that sort of
Yeah.
pure side of, come on, man, like you're selling fucking, excuse the language, like you're
Yeah.
selling deodorant, like what are you doing? Like it's
Yeah.
embarrassing, like your Pop Tarts and stuff.
Right.
And for the editor of Life magazine to go, you don't get it, you don't see it because you're not in it. But in order to get meaningful information out to a public that requires it, that needs it, we are you're a journalist you're in service to the people, right? And the only way that we can get that out is if we do all this other stuff, and that's what's happened, and that's where we are today. And obviously we've gone way past anything that's remotely safe or sane. But it was really important to me to spend the time on it then.
I'm sure. I'm sure. To wrap it up, I could ask you, could talk to you for an hour about this movie because there's so many amazing things I loved about it. But at the end of the day, Andrew, when you finished this, and now you're still obviously talking about it and plugging it and everything, which is amazing. How you're a visual artist, you're not just a filmmaker, you're a painter, you're a sculptor, you do so much. Your wife is a singer and actor, everything, and it's so encompassed in your life being visual arts. But when you look back at this experience, how did it change you? And going forward, how is it going to inflect future work?
Sure. So, I work a lot on industrial pollution in general and wildlife conservation. And often my work, whether it's a book of poetry or it's sculptural or it's paintings, or I just had a meaningful exhibition in Athens at the Galandris Museum, which is a fantastic museum, and it was all about sort of
Nice.
industrial pollution and but again, showing the beauty, showing the positivity, showing the opportunity. Um, you know, I think in making a film like this, where everything felt right in terms of the making, um, I think my takeaway was, or my biggest takeaway, um, was sort of living with that day-to-day experience and being present in a way that allows for an immersion that as a filmmaker you don't often have, right? Like
Hmm.
sometimes you're intellectually immersed in it, you have all of these jobs to do, but because of how emotional it was to make this film, we were really there. I mean, we were
Yeah.
emotionally there. Like it was our lives, it was our kids, it was our relatives that were on screen and that were suffering. And while it takes a lot out of you, um, it's almost feels like no one's asked me this, and I haven't. I don't have it uh, in succinct terms, but it's almost when you think of an actor who's like a method actor who
Right.
goes all the way in. It was really nice as a filmmaker to go all the way in.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons that the film is so tonally, it knows what it wants to be. It knows what it's trying to say. It has all of that in it. And I think it's because we lived it.
Right. Yeah.
And so in terms of things for my work in the future, whether I'm in my studio and I'm painting or however I'm working, or if I'm making another film, I think that's a touchstone. That's a place for me to do that method directing, I guess. Coin the phrase here, but that idea to live it,
Yeah.
and not step away from it. It was, it felt really, really special. I feel incredibly connected to these people.
Yeah, well, you've done an incredible job with it. Congratulations. I hope a lot of people get to see this. And I really just wanted to thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And best of luck with everything.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
you're very welcome. Have a great rest of your day.
Well.
Okay, bye-bye. Thanks.